Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to talk about the new Sadako, whether or not she's better or worse, and we can kind of go from there. So I think what the developers were trying to do was nerf the Condemn playstyle. If you were unaware, the Condemn playstyle was a build that basically involved slugging everyone to death, running as many slowdowns as possible, and eventually repeatedly teleporting next to someone and targeting them down until you can instantly kill them. You would run even save the best for last sometimes, so they couldn't put a tape in the VCR in front of you to remove their Condemn stacks. Overall, it was an extremely obnoxious, horribly unfun thing to go against. It was right up there with, like a Skull Merchant 3 gen. It was genuinely horrible for the game. At the same side, though, the reason that people did this with Sadako is because she was so bad that there's not really much else you can do there. And it's the same thing with Skull Merchant. The reason people gravitated toward 3 gen Skull Merchant is because she doesn't really have much else going for her. It's kind of the only thing you can do. So we have this awkward scenario where the only really effective strat against good teams is miserable for the actual health of the game. And that's not really on the fault of the killer or the survivor. That's more on the devs for making that the only super viable playstyle. And so what the devs were trying to do with this Sadako rework is make it so that that is not the effective playstyle anymore. And they want it to be so, instead of Condemn being applied repeatedly to one person and removing them from the match, it's sort of a more slow but consistent thing that affects everybody throughout the match. So that's why when you teleport to a TV now, it no longer applies Condemn to nearby people. It applies Condemn to everybody on the map, which means you should be teleporting as much as possible. Now, this is a downside, though, because now teleporting has a cooldown, and the first suggestion I would make here is something a lot of people have echoed, where you can teleport with no cooldown, but you can only apply that global Condemn every 15 seconds, which is the current teleport cooldown. I think that'd be a lot more fair. That way she retains her map control, but she can't just give everyone 5 Condemn stacks in 10 seconds, because that would be stupid, and that would be honestly way too strong. So, like I said, the idea behind what they're trying, where they're spreading out Condemn to everybody, but at a slower, more consistent rate, is a good idea. I just think they gave too many drawbacks for it right now, to the point where it's not strong enough to justify the removal of the whole Condemn build. So, there are too many things that can counter this. For example, something that people found very quickly was that if the entire team just grabs tapes, it's not that really much of a downside. Because what happens if you have a tape and you get hit, you gain a Condemn stack. If you're hooked while holding a tape, everybody not holding a tape gains a Condemn stack. But if everyone's holding a tape, it's basically just as good as individual players are in the match, and it's not that big of a deal. And the reason why it's not that big of a deal is because you no longer passively gain Condemn while you're holding a tape. I think that should change back. Because they changed it so that you can now take a tape out of a VCR and put it in any TV rather than a specific one without the add-on. Because that's now gone, I think it should be okay to have that passive Condemn buildup. Because the whole point is, if you get to maximum Condemn, it's because you as a survivor have fucked up or you were super greedy, and that should be scary for you. You should pay for that. And that's totally fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because of how easy it is to remove your stacks, you should be building them up pretty quickly when you're holding a tape, and that should be a dangerous time for you. You can even make it so, if you don't want someone to get focused down with Condemn, that if you are being chased by the killer, the timer doesn't go up or whatever. So, I mean, that's whatever. You can do something like that. I'm not even sure that's currently works, but they need to give her something else, because the change that they made, it's in the spirit of good game health. It's the correct way to go. And I'd much rather be in a scenario like that where they have the basis for the right idea. They have the right idea in their head. They just didn't give her enough. So I think her chase needs to be stronger. I think that's the most important part, because when you have a killer whose power is essentially just kind of slowing everyone else down, you still need to give her a power in the chase that helps her. And right now, there are very few things she can do in chase. Yeah, there are some things you can do with like the invisibility after manifesting, but even those add-ons got nerfed. So there's a lot of just not very strong potential, I guess, with her chase. They did change one thing where now if she is demanifested, she can no longer be stunned, which sounds cool in theory, but in practice, it doesn't really do much, because you walk under a pallet and then they drop it on you. Okay, now what? You still have to kick the pallet. It's not like you're Wraith with Shadow Dance or something like that, so it doesn't really end up doing much. Additionally, if people just pre-drop, I mean, there's not really much that she can do about that, whereas killers like Wraith can, have Shadow Dance. When she comes out of invisibility, she's slowed down. I saw a lot of people suggesting, why don't we give her the same speed up as Wraith when she comes out of her, invisibility? But then you're just making Wraith again, and that's not interesting. So I think they should go the opposite direction and make it so she's no longer slowed down while manifesting. Right now, she goes to 3.68 meters a second, which is slower than a survivor while manifesting. I think there's no reason to have that downside anymore. We need to make her able to manifest and demanifest in chase pretty much as she wants. Now, she still has to time it so she can swing when she comes out of manifest and stuff like that. So there are still options for counterplay there. But even a simple change like that would make her significantly stronger in chase. It would make her invisibility add-ons where she comes out of her demanifest and the invisibility kind of flickers on and off for a longer period of time. It would make that stronger. Just remove the slowdown. I think remove the slowdown, keep the no stun, things like that. Hell, you could even go further with that. You can make it so if she is stunned with a pallet while she's invisible, you get a stack of condemn or something like that. Then people will, of course, pre-drop. But I'm saying, like, there's still, like, I'm not thinking of specifics here. I'm just talking about a broad general idea. Her chase needs to overall be stronger to justify the removal of her strongest strat. I do think removing that strongest strat was a very good idea because it was miserable, but let's give her something else to actually make her dangerous in a chase more so than she currently is, because no stun while invis is not really much of anything. So there's a lot of ways they can go with this, whether it's not slowing her down or, giving condemn stacks in different ways based on things happening in a chase, or making it so that if you do get a hit, you get 2 condemn stacks, making holding a tape more punishing. There's so many little things they can do that are not particularly hard. The fundamental idea that they've made here is better than what they currently had. They just need to tweak it now and actually make her a threat. And I think she'll be honestly a great killer. I actually enjoyed playing her a lot on the PTB, which is weird because I hate her. But I was winning all my games, but then it's also PTB, and PTB doesn't have matchmaking. People are disconnecting and stuff. I never base a killer's strength off of how much I'm winning and losing in a PTB. I only base it off of what I'm currently doing to exert my skill in the match over the other players. And I'll be honest, I didn't feel like I was doing much. I was just doing basic killer fundamentals, moonwalking, and just basic killer stuff that is basically usable on any killer. But I did find I was condemning someone almost every game. Now they would probably cure it before I can make use of it. But games were going slower without really having any slowdown, because people were getting tapes and a lot more is happening. It's kind of hard to notice when you're playing Sadako, but the games are going slower in the background because the survivor's having to do more stuff. So that's good. It's side objectives. It removes her annoying part. Let's just give her something more for the chase, and I think she will actually be very well designed. So that's it. Thanks for watching.